Hello, I'm Sharad Raze, practicing chartered accountant for more than 38 years and handling disciplinary cases for 17-18 years. From today, we'll be starting Schedule 2 of the Chartered Accountants Act, Company Secretaries Act, as well as Cost and Works Accountants Acts. As told repeatedly earlier, the two schedules of the three statutes are identical, equal, without even a change of a comma or a full stop. Now, second schedule, as compared with the first schedule, is more serious. In a sense, the misconduct cases relating to first schedule are heard by a board of discipline consisting of 3 members. We have seen that. And the schedule 2 misconduct is investigated or looked into by the disciplinary committee, again consisting of 5 members. In case of board of discipline, there is a restriction on the powers of the board of discipline. It can reprimand, award fine up to rupees 1 lakh, and removal up to 3 months. Whereas in case of disciplinary committee, as to the misconduct covered by Schedule 2, it can reprimand and or levy a fine of rupees 5 lakhs and or remove a member for any period, and there are cases where the committee has removed the members of the institute for life, not for 1 year or 2 years, but for the entire life, remaining life. Now, that being the case, we consider that the misconduct cases of Schedule 2 are serious than compared with Schedule 1. So today we are starting with Schedule 2 Part 1 as applicable to in relation to chartered accountants in practice. What the clause 1 says, a chartered accountant in practice shall be deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct if he discloses information acquired in the course of his professional engagement to any person other than his client, so engaging him, or without the consent of his client or otherwise than as required by any law for the time being in force. So it has got 3 or 4 clauses. If the practicing professional discloses information which is acquired by him in the course of professional engagement, a professional acquires substantial information and many times confidential information only to such professional. It is always said that nothing should be hidden from a doctor so far as health is concerned. In the like manner, nothing should be hidden or nothing is hidden about the wealth of a person. So a professional knows much details while conducting the professional engagement of his client. If such information is divulged by such professional, it will shake the professional or the confidence a professional has. The client will lose the confidence and he may not give full disclosure, he may not give full information, or in general, the professional will come into disrepute. In the like manner, the doctor gives information about the health of a patient, about the disease, only to the near relative when asked for, or generally with the consent of the patient. And if the patient is not in a position to give consent, then to the nearest relative, wife, son, daughter, etc., but only the information which is sufficient, not in depth, not in detail. In the like manner, a professional chartered accountant, cost accountant, or company secretary should not disclose the information which comes into his possession while conducting the engagement. Of course, he can give the information to the client himself. Probably, client has given some information, some data, some documents, and from those documents, a different conclusion can be drawn by a professional. And if that conclusion the concerned client may not be aware of it, then it is natural duty of a professional to give such information to the client that what you are presuming it may not be correct on the basis of documents which are produced before me or which I have come across while doing the professional engagement. It is not to be given to any outsider, obviously, but with the consent it can be given. Now, to give an example, if the professional chartered accountant is also attending the assessment proceedings before the income tax authorities or appearing before the appellate authorities, then he is doing with the consent of a client, then he can give information whatever asked for by the tax authorities. However, a precaution should be taken that especially in case of appellate authorities, the professional obviously takes a power of attorney, but I have seen many professionals, especially the senior ones, including myself, the tax authorities do not ask for powers of attorney because everything was done in good faith. The assessing officer seeks cooperation from the professional, and we give the information sought for, asked for by the tax authorities, and the concerned client is also aware of it, but he does not take any objection. But suppose the dispute has arisen and the client makes a statement that I had not given the power of attorney to my chartered accountant, and yet he had disclosed the confidential information to the tax authorities, then it will lead to a professional misconduct. So one thing should be ensured before representing any of your client, one should always take a power of attorney in your name to represent the client, because one of the most important clause in the power of attorney is anything done by the attorney shall be on my behalf and I am bound by his statements, submissions, etc. So then it will be difficult for the client to retract later on that the professional has acted beyond his capacity. However, if it is so required by law, that means if the tax authorities issue the summons under 131 of the Income Tax Act and seeks information from the professional directly, then he is bound by law to give such information, and in that case there is no need to have the consent of the client. Now, this criteria or this restriction is continued even after the completion of engagement. That means this condition is applicable so long as you are auditor or so long as you are in a professional relationship with the client, not necessarily. Even if you are no longer the auditor or you are no longer the consultant or a professional advisor, nonetheless, this condition or this restriction continues forever, not to disclose the information which comes into the possession of the professional. As we are aware that as per clause 8 of schedule 1 part 1, a new auditor is required to communicate to the previous auditor. Now in this situation, if the previous auditor informs the new auditor or gives some indication or to be cautious about certain accounts or to be cautious about certain transactions, then it is not considered as disclosure of information, it is permissible. For example, previous auditor can communicate to the new auditor that the transactions with respect to valuation of stock or the physical stock and the book stock rarely agrees, or there is a likelihood of scrap being sold out but not getting accounted for, such information can be communicated to the new auditor, and that is permissible for the previous auditor. It will not, the clause 1 will not be affected. As to the working papers, especially in case of an auditor of a company or a bank, and there are separate auditors for the branches. The company auditor or a bank auditor can rely upon the audit reports of the branch auditors. However, he can seek the information whatever he requires. However, he cannot seek or he cannot ask for the working papers of the branch auditors, because working papers is the privileged document of the auditor. So the bank auditor or a company auditor can rely upon the reports of the branch auditors, but the bank auditor cannot ask for copies of working papers or the original working papers for his record. The same position is also applicable to internal auditors. In a sense, the company auditor, statutory auditor can rely or can get the assistance of internal auditor's report, but he cannot seek the custody of the working papers of internal auditors, working papers, for the simple reason the working papers of internal auditor is their property, and the internal auditor is not required to give it to any other person. Now, as to the court, whenever the court issues a direction, then only the professional is required to give the information to the court. Now, one more fact that has been highlighted and which is a legal issue. If while conducting the professional engagement, if the professional comes to notice that the client has done something illegal, patently illegal, is he bound by law to give the information to the authorities concerned? That is a typically legal issue, because the protection is provided to the advocates, solicitor, vakil, etc., is not available to professionals like chartered accountant, cost accountants, and company secretaries. As I recollect, something about some 35 years back, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India had sought the legal opinion from the then renowned advocate, legal luminary, Fali Nariman, and that opinion he mentioned that the protection given to the advocates or vakil pleader is not available to the professional chartered accountant, and that's why this position continues even today. But this is too much legal issues are involved, so it is advisable that before giving this information which has come to your notice while doing the professional engagement, and which you feel that this is patently illegal and needs to be informed, have a advice first and then give the information. A similar provision is there in Maharashtra under the Maharashtra Cooperative Societies Act, where while doing the audit of cooperative societies, if there is a misfeasance or misappropriation of funds or something patently illegal has been done by the society, then the auditor of such society is required by law under section 81 of the Maharashtra Cooperative Societies Act 1960 to inform the registrar of cooperative societies, and with his direction the auditor is required by law to file first information report to the nearest police chowki. So these things are not to be told to the client, but to be done by the professional chartered accountant outside the knowledge or without the knowledge of a society. That means he has to write to the registrar, seek his guidance, and then file an FIR, and thereafter the society will come to know that auditor has filed a complaint. So I think that this is an exception to the general proposition that it should not be disclosed to any person unless required by law, and this condition of filing an FIR is a requirement of Maharashtra Cooperative Societies Act. So obviously it is an exception to this clause 1. So far for clause 1. If you like the video, like it, subscribe it, and pass it on to our professional brothers and sisters to be more aware of these stringent provisions, especially of Schedule 2 to the 3 respective statutes. Thank you very much.